I received a mail about death and rebirth, reincarnation. Now, honestly speaking, I have never given it much thought, other than this, that there is a fundamental question here as to who dies and who gets reincarnated. Because the entity that sprang, which identified itself with the mind and body organism, it came into being in this birth, here and now. And that entity should ideally dissolve when the body disintegrates. So, the question that there is someone who reincarnates and perhaps goes through karma to resolve all the sins he has done in the past birth is a bit of a mystery. Mystery because who is it that takes rebirth? And since we established that we are not the doers, so who is the one? Let's say if even if there is a past birth, who is the one that did all those bad deeds, all those sins? You cannot commit a sin because there is no you. The notion of you, the sense of separate existence, the sense of personal identification is a myth. There is no separateness. Therefore, whatever happens, happens according to cosmic law. A law that nature follows diligently, without fail. Therefore, there is no role, there is no significant role that you play as human being other than to facilitate the execution of this cosmic law. Therefore, you don't get to decide what sins or good deeds you are going to commit. The Bhagavad Gita says that you cannot commit a sin and you also cannot do any good deed because you are not the doer. So, when you are not the doer and there was no you apparently in the past birth, then who is that entity which takes rebirth? Now, the reason why this question comes up, according to my concept, is because the ego mind wants continuity. The ego mind is most scared of death. So it tries to establish continuity by coming up with the concepts of afterlife or rebirth, and that we have a choice whether we can stay in the afterlife and or take a rebirth. But who is this entity that goes into the afterlife or takes a rebirth? Now, I do not know, to be honest. So maybe there is an afterlife, maybe there is a rebirth. We never know. So I respect that also, people who believe that there is rebirth and there is continuation. I respect their beliefs. But for me, when it is established that one is not the doer of their actions, there is no question of a doer entity taking rebirth after the disintegration of body or death into a new body. The process could be something like this. Now, again, it is just a concept, so don't take it too seriously. So, the process could be something like this, that the body, the formation of body and mind organism is because of certain very subtle energy strands, which are called samskaras, which are the internal traits and tendencies which are not visible to the conscious mind, but they are there, deep integrated into the body. Now, after death, the ego entity, the sense of personal identification, dissolves because it is not needed anymore. But that said, the sanskaras still remain, the energy strands still remain, and they go back into the pool of consciousness from where they came. Now, a lot of those samskaras are energetic strands, so they coagulate again and form a new structure. And when they form a new structure, a new entity arises as a result. So, this new entity or new me contains some of the samskaras which were associated with another body at another time. So, yes, something does get passed on, but the concept of rebirth is still a mystery. Although we have a lot of documentaries and a lot of evidences that there is rebirth and that some people have been able to recall their past lives. Now, it is perfectly understandable that one may be able to see certain incidents, certain visions. One can have such certain visions of the past because everything comes from consciousness. So whatever information plays out here in phenomenality has to be somewhere in the consciousness. So someone can have that kind of a vision where they can see some of that content, but that does not necessarily mean that it was the same person in the previous birth. And even if one knows, it is not of much use, because I came across a documentary where an Indian boy, a small boy, maybe 6, 7 years old, remembered his previous birth. Now he could identify name of his wife and parents and how he died. Now he died in a traumatic accident, not an accident, he was murdered actually by people. He was shot and he remembered that. So they took this boy to that place. Somehow they figured it out. I think that documentary is on YouTube. If you want, you can look it up. Now the boy went to the wife and he recited he explained some of the incidents, and they all matched, and the wife was quite surprised. But now what is the widow wife supposed to do with the child? Because this is completely a new entity, new formation. Yes, there is some recollection of something, but it is not of much use. So even if you do a lot of meditation or attain occult powers to somehow look into the past lives or whatever is there, it is not of much use to you. It will not do you any good, because if the content is hidden in this birth for you, then that is there for a purpose. You are to live your life completely right now rather than worrying about future or past. And as it is, this life itself is quite a trauma. So remembering traumas of the previous births is not going to benefit as such. Even if you do remember, that achievement may not mean much. So that was my take on the concept of birth and rebirth. But there is a fundamental question which is open, that who is it that dies and who is it that is born?